supported. We've got the eye bolt in the end of the aileron temporarily and only loosely, and the frames are held together with inner tube bands here. You can use big elastic bands or whatever you like, but we've got a couple inner tube bands that are sliced up. We're resting the end of the aileron on a piece of timber, and there's some props on the timber so that we can support the aileron whilst we slide the sail on. There's a timber piece here, must support the trailing edge and the leading edge at the same time, otherwise you'll bend the frame. Also, you have to make sure that the frames are dead straight by eyeballing down the frames. Now we're going to tape the eye bolt in position now down at the tip here, and that'll be the next stage. Okay, this is the next stage. We're going to use filament tape and tape the tip in position. It's also to protect the end of the leading edge tube so that the sailcloth doesn't get torn. And you've got to be fairly neat about it. You don't want to end up too bulky with the tape. It needs 2 layers, and we're putting the second layer on now. We're using the eye bolt to hold the tip in position whilst it's taped, and then the eye bolt will be removed. So 2 layers of tape, roll them in as neat as possible. 1 wrap around, securing the 2 tapes, which is about to be done. So 1 wrap. And then push all the tape down so there's no exposed edges, that the fabric can roll an edge up and grab on the tape, because if it grabs on the glue, then it's going to make it very difficult. Okay, next stage in a sec. Okay, we're about to fit the aileron cover on. The ailerons must have no sharp edges, and the rivet must have no stems sticking out which can tear the sail, so make sure everything is clean and everything is smooth. And then if you're refitting a sail on an old frame, well, then make sure there's no corrosion. Make sure all the holes for the hinges are all nice and smooth and everything's clean. Okay, so we're going to place the sail in position now. You pick the correct cover so that the Velcro is towards the top, and just carefully slide the aileron cover on, and maintaining the Velcro on top of the leading edge. The Velcro here must stay directly on top of the leading edge. The stitch will be approximately on the centre of the trailing edge. Now we've got the frame supported down the end, and the best way to pull the cover on, moving right along here, you'll notice that we're dragging the cover down. We've got 2 people working here, 1 feeding on and 1 dragging. We pull along segments of cloth, and the best way to get grip on the cloth when it gets difficult is to wet your hands. And we slide the elastic bands out of the way as the cover's going on. Now at this point here, the aileron's rotating, and we have to rotate as we pull to keep the Velcro in position on the leading edge. Otherwise the cover will start turning on itself, and it'll be difficult to rotate it later. So segments of cloth being pulled along. You can see all the wrinkles down here, and it gets pulled along in another section, and you just gradually work it down. This cover's not too difficult. Some covers can be very hard, and you just got to persevere. If you're having trouble with grip, then wet your hands, and that gives you a better grip on the fabric. You can see the wrinkles just moving along in segments. And just keep forcing the sail until you get the sail right down to the end, and then we'll get on to the next stage. Okay, next stage, we've got the cover down until we've got to the last tube. We're going to put double-sided tape. We're using 12mm double-sided. We're using two layers side by side just off the end of the leading edge there, and we're going to layer up around the last compression tube and completely cover that tube from all sides. So that'll take about 3 layers of 12mm seam stick, and that's to hold the cloth once we pull the last section down. Got to get the seam stick on early, otherwise you put the cloth there, you have to pull the cloth back to get the seam stick on. You can stick the ends down with contact cement, a little bit messy, or you can do it with super glue. The double side tape's good in the fact that you can pull the cloth off and reset it if you haven't quite got it tight enough. Okay, now we're going to stretch the aileron in now and get the rest of the cover on, and then we'll do the close off. Alright, so we're pulling the cover along now, working every wrinkle towards the wing root. And you can see all the wrinkles here. We've got to move all the loose cloth completely off the aileron, and just got to do it really carefully, have it supported. We've got lots of loose cloth here at the moment. And we're just moving the frame out. We'll hold it against our body. You can put a piece of timber on your chest or whatever and just pull all the wrinkles up. And the next stage is we've got to stretch the cloth, and that one there you have to get fairly physical with it, and we're about to do that now. Okay, I'm just wetting my hands up. We're going to do the hard stretch in now, and we move down to the end. We make sure that the aileron is supported well. I'm going to get a decent grip on it. No. And I move the aileron away from the wall and I bash it. And we're bashing this against the timber. And we're slowly working the wrinkles down. At this point here, I have to pull it up against my body. And I'm going to give it another bash here. And I've pulled it as tight as I can get it this time. We have to check it at the tip and see that the fabric is stretched. All the wrinkles must be stretched out and it must be very tight at the tip. At this point here, we'll just check if we can stretch the tip on its own as tight as possible. And now we're going to fit the eye bolt in whilst this cloth is tight, because the cloth will keep creeping back. So we're going to fix this off now. This will be the next stage. At the moment, we've got a soldering iron heating up. This one is a little bit tighter, and we've got the cloth pulled along, and you can see all the bunched up cloth, and it's all in segments every foot. And when they're really tight, you have to take them through in segments, and we're working this one through bit by bit, and just move along a section of cloth, then move a little bit more along and a bit more until you gradually get to the end, and then we'll get on to the next stage. Okay, occasionally the fabric will catch on the rivet as it's going across. We slide mylar under it, which is a hard plastic, so that the cloth will slide over the rivet head, and then just remove it once you get past. You may have to do it to every rivet to get the fabric to go over, and then just get it out of the way before it jams itself in, and then into the next bay. Okay, we've got the covers on the ailerons and we've stretched them. What we're going to do now with the soldering iron is burn out the hole for the eye bolt, and that's what we're doing at this point. We're doing both together. Then we have to locate the internal compression tube, which we taped in position, and we use a long piece of steel here, it's like a 4-inch bolt, and it's got a point on it. Once we know we've got the thread in position, and quite often it's a bit hard to line it up, so we've got to pull it into position by moving the trailing edge, get the thread located, because the bashing of the cloth puts it out of alignment. Put the eye bolt in. It must have 2 washers on the eye bolt, and then wind the eye bolt down. Mustn't go too tight with the eye bolt, otherwise it'll crush the leading edge. So just take it up nice and firm in its correct alignment, and then we're just going to do the next one. Once again, lining up the compression tube inside, getting the thread in alignment. We've got a point ground on the end of this piece of steel so that we can pull it into alignment. It's got to be dead straight, otherwise you could end up cross-threading the bolt and having to pull the whole cover off. Okay, the eye bolt's going in, we'll tension that up, and then we'll be up to the next stage. Okay, next stage, we've put the eye bolt in, and we're going to put the aileron back on the rack and force the cloth down. Now, this is quite physical. You have to use all the strength you've got to move the wrinkles along. We've got the aileron supported down on the end. It's actually supported on the trailing edge and the leading edge at the same time. You just got to be very careful, and we're working the last wrinkles right to the very end. Now, the more time and the tighter you can get this, the better your aileron is going to be. Okay, now we're going to have to cut the excess fabric and do the last final tension. I've turned the aileron around. I'm sitting on a chair, and I'm going to stretch the fabric in as tight as I can on this last little segment, and it's sitting quite good. Now, with the excess, we get some scissors and we cut right on the edge of the stitch line until we strike the trailing edge. Now I'm cutting along on the edge here of the leading edge until we get up to the compression tube on both sides. Scissor cutting up, and you'll notice here that there's all this seam on this segment here. I'm going to cut that out because it gets a bit too thick and bulky. I'm just cutting down directly down the centre of this, because we have to keep a fair bit of reasonable amount of cloth, and that's the actual seam on the trailing edge. Cutting that off, you can see the trailing edge there, and I'm levering and I can't get any more. I cut it up in line with the compression tube there, and we just do little small cuts. Now I'm going to pull the fabric up as tight as I can and stick off the initial section here. To do that, we remove the top of the double-sided tape. Got that one off, and I'm going to remove these cover strips too off the double-sided tape in here. So they're all out of the way. Now, supporting this on my chest with a piece of timber so that I can pull hard, I'm going to grab the excess on the cloth and I'm going to reef it towards myself as tight as possible and push it down on the glue. So here it goes. It's down there, and I'm just sticking it to the double-sided tape. Now, if it doesn't work out well, then pull it off again and redo it again. But this is sitting down quite well, and I'm using the back of the scissors to make sure that it's really sticking on the tape correctly. This is the top surface of the aileron, and we want to glue off the bottom surface first. So this is the Velcro side. We're turning the aileron over. It's been glued on the leading edge here, but hasn't been glued anywhere else. And our double-sided tape is uncovered there, so the next thing I'm going to do is stretch up again just with this cover here, pull it down and force it onto the glue. And it's stuck on the glue there. It's reasonably tight. Once again, if it's not good enough, pull it off and stick it back down again. Now, rolling it over, we've got all this excess cloth. I'm going to cut the cloth off approximately 20 mils past the tube, and I'm going to push that inside, and it's glued all the way around on this tube, and it will stick to the glue. So shoving it all in, making sure it's all stuck down. So that's the bottom edge, all glued in. Now we'll have to finish this edge, and to do that we'll have to re-glue. And we push some double-sided tape in there as far as you can get it with your finger. You can't get it completely in. Flipping over, got to be fairly neat about this to keep the double-sided tape right next to itself. I've done 2 layers here, and what I'm going to do is pull the top off this layer so that I can put the next layer overhanging it just lightly, so that I'm not bringing the finish of the sail too far out. And we'll pull the cover tape off. We go around here, pull the cover tape off that one, so we've got all the exposed glue now. Once again, I'm just going to support on my chest lightly. I hold the fabric up, tension it, and you can either have someone else push down and push the fabric onto the glue whilst you hold it tight. Once it's on the glue, it should hold. And once again, using the back of the scissors, make sure it's bedded down completely. We're rolling over, and I'm going to stretch the sail flap onto that glue, bed it down with the scissors. Now very carefully, need a nice sharp pair of scissors, I'm going to pull it back off the glue just a fraction, and then run the scissors along, and that parts it off. Any excess glue showing past the fabric can actually just be rolled off with your finger, and you can just roll it out of the way. It just rolls itself up, and then you can make a nice neat finish there. You notice here where the fabric's been cut, there's a segment there that's not covered, but we'll cover that up in a minute, and now we're going to go to the next stage. Okay, this is the next stage. We're going to clean the fabric up here. I have a hot knife here which gets hot really fast. If you don't have a hot knife, it's best if you just heat up a blade. You can actually use the soldering iron and just drag the soldering iron around it carefully. This blade heats up in around about 10 seconds, and then we're just going to cut off, leaving about 25 mil of cloth just to where it's been glued with the double-sided tape. So we cut that off there, make sure it's staying on the double-sided tape. Doesn't matter if double-sided tape's sticking out a little bit far. Now we're using here some sticky back sailcloth. You can use any sort of tape if you like, and that's just going to cover up the finished section. So just pushing that down, tensioning it up. It is not 100% necessary to put this on, but it's just one way of finishing it off. I mean, the cloth is okay just stuck to the double-sided tape, and that's how we finish the cloth off. The next stage is to put the cover strips over here. We'll get onto that later on. Now the aileron's all been stretched in, it's all sitting quite well. It has a few little wrinkles, and those wrinkles find their way out. You can use a heat gun or a light iron to take the wrinkles out, but they will find their way out over time. Now from the stretching process, the aileron has a banana in it. It's slightly bent. And hence we've got to take that bend out of the aileron, and the way we do it is just lightly put it on the trailing edge, and it's usually banana this way. We just put it on the trailing edge and we just push lightly on the leading edge, and we'll just sight down the aileron and make sure it's dead straight and parallel. And that's how you fit the cover, other than completing the can, and then we've got to put all the hinge points in position. Okay, the last stage is we've closed the ends off. Now we're going to put these cover strips on the end here. They're normally riveted down with 1/8 rivets. Sometimes they might be 532 if you're doing an old aileron. Okay, so we put the can in tight. We're drilling a 1/8 hole into the tube there. That's one rivet. We keep it held in tight here on the trailing edge. And these are only normally fairly short rivets. And there's one rivet at the trailing edge. And there isn't much room to make errors on the trailing edge, so you have to make sure it's held in well. And this one just went into a hole that was already existing there. This aileron's just recently been repaired. Try for the trailing edge. So there's only 6 rivets in these end caps. That's them fitted. The next job will be finding the locations and burning out the holes for all the hinge points, which we'll do in a sec. Okay, with these cover cans, they're not on, we don't use them when we're doing Seconite sails. They're only on a normal sail cloth. The Seconite is glued off so well and finished so tight that they don't need any cover strips. Okay, we're going to burn the holes out for the hinges. Now we feel with a sharp edge or a prick punch and find where the holes are located for the hinges. We're using a soldering iron here to burn out the fabric, and the reason we just don't drill them out is that you don't get a neat hole, and the fabric fibres can make it difficult for the rivets to be fitted. So there's 6 holes there, another 6 holes up at this point, and 3 holes at this end here. And the next thing is to fit the hinges as was done on the tails. These are stainless steel 5/4 rivets, but some of the earlier ailerons have stainless steel 6/4 rivets. And that's the end of this segment.